Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. How's Eddie Frederick?
So glad you can join us. St. Kitts and Nevis has its first female Governor General. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Thursday, 2nd February 2023. Details when we return.
Hubbard's Multi-Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies Compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
Welcome back. By the time this news item is aired via Caribbean Perspective, St. Kitts and Nevis will have its first female Governor General when Her Excellency Marcella LeBird, JP, would have been sworn in during the 31st January ceremony that was carded to begin at 11:50 p.m. Glenn Bart of SKN Newsline reports.
St. Kitts and Nevis is about to have its first female Governor General when Her Excellency Marcella LeBird, JP, is sworn in during the 31st January ceremony that will begin at 11:50 p.m. at Government House. Her Excellency LeBird will replace outgoing Governor General Sir Tapley Seaton. LeBird served the country in various capacities, including being a sportswoman, a teacher, lawyer, member of parliament, Speaker of the National Assembly, and an elected cabinet minister in the federal government of St. Kitts and Nevis. As a minister, she promoted legislation including the Domestic Violence Act and the Equal Pay Act. She was recognized for her contribution to the development of gender equality and was also elected the first female chairperson of the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party. She has been serving as Governor General's deputy since 15 September 2022. Glenn Bart reporting for SKN Newsline.
Still on St. Kitts and Nevis, the opposition leadership impasse among the Nevis Reformation Party is embarrassing and is bad optics for the party, reasoned political analyst Peter Wickham. Andre Huey of SKN Newsline has more.
The opposition leadership impasse within the Nevis Reformation Party is embarrassing and is bad optics for the party, reasoned political analyst Peter Wickham. Mr. Wickham, weighing in on the latest development in the party, said with the hearing of the election petitions imminent, it is not a good look for the party for the two elected members fighting over who should be the opposition leader.
I was surprised, when a party comes as close as they did to winning, one would assume that they understand the benefit of unified action and unity in opposition. Clearly, that has lost. My understanding is that her greater concern is that if she doesn't get the opposition leadership, there should be something else in it for her, which is the nomination of a senator. That seems to be a bigger concern. But regardless of what it is, it's unseemly, it's unfortunate, and it's not the type of thing that one would expect for a party that, as I said, is within striking distance of the control of Nevis Island administration.
According to sources, there is a deadlock on who will be the leader of the parliamentary opposition, as neither party leader, Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge, or elected member, Cleone Stapleton Simmons, is prepared to support the other for the position, as it is also affecting the selection of the senator for the opposition benches. Mr. Wickham reasons that Stapleton Simmons' actions may stem from ill feelings from not being elected as party leader in 2020 when the position became available.
I think that would be my feeling, that she would have seen herself as a better person to lead. In a situation where a party chooses not to identify with her, clearly there's something wrong. And for them, they're clear that they would prefer someone else to lead. But for the individual in that situation, and there are a couple of them across the region, where you end up in Parliament or in the Assembly, as her case, in her case, and you're not the leader, even though you're the only person there, it would suggest that there is something fundamentally wrong, and you are uncomfortable with that feeling. And I think against that background, she's decided, look, if I'm going to have to finish any business in relation to leadership, it's better it be done now because it can't be done later, and that's what she's hedging her bets on. Still, I think it is highly unwise.
Dr. Daniel Hodge told SK Newsline that the matter will be properly resolved according to the party's guidelines, and commented also on the perception of the issue on the party that gained an extra seat in the December 2022 election on Nevis. I'm Andre Huey for SKN Newsline.
A global recession may not occur this year as previously forecast, according to the latest World Economic Outlook from the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. SKN Newsline's Andre Huey fills us in.
A global recession may not occur this year as previously forecast, according to the latest World Economic Outlook from the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. In its World Economic Outlook update press briefing on Monday, the IMF said it expected the global economy to slow this year as central banks continued to raise interest rates to tame inflation, but also suggested that output would be more resilient than previously anticipated and that a global recession would probably be avoided. The IMF, in revising its projections in October, pointed to resilient consumers and the reopening of China's economy as among the reasons for a more optimistic outlook. Pierre-Olivier Gourinchas, Chief Economist and Director, Research Department at the IMF, provided a synopsis of the IMF's Outlook update at the press briefing Monday.
Growth will remain weak by historical standards as the fight against inflation and Russia's war in Ukraine weigh on activity. Despite these headwinds, the outlook is less gloomy than in our October forecast and could represent a turning point, with growth bottoming out and inflation declining. Economic growth proved surprisingly resilient in the third quarter of last year, with strong labor market, robust private demand, and better than expected adaptation to the energy crisis in Europe. Inflation, too, showed improvement, with overall measures now decreasing in most places, even if core inflation, which excludes more volatile energy and food prices, has yet to peak in many countries. China's sudden reopening paves the way for a rapid rebound in activity. And global financial conditions have improved as inflation pressures started to abate. This and the weakening of the US dollar from its November high provided some relief to emerging and developing economies.
Global inflation, Mr. Gourinchas said, is expected to decline in 2023, though it is expected to be above pre-pandemic levels in the ensuing years. The IMF economist provided some recommendations to monetary policies in global economies to lessen the risks from the slowdown in economic growth.
Where inflation pressures remain elevated, central banks need to raise real policy rates above a neutral stance and keep them there until underlying inflation is on a decisive declining path. Easing too early risks undoing most of the gains achieved so far.
In the United States, growth is expected to slow from 2% in 2022 to 1.4% in 2023. In October, the IMF predicted even slower economic growth globally and forecast a possible recession. This update, however, sees a more improved economy and lessening possibility of a global recession. Andre Huey, SKN Newsline.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. The Police Service Social and Welfare Association in Trinidad and Tobago has weighed in on a viral video showing an officer attempting to arrest a traffic warden. Noting that the officer has since been placed on suspension pending an investigation, Association head Gideon Dixon is urging members of the public to allow due process to have its course. TV6's Renessa Cutting has more.
CCTV footage of the incident between the traffic warden and the police officer surfaced on Tuesday, giving much-needed insight into the moments before the incident unfolded. In the footage, the traffic warden is seen gesturing to the side of the road repeatedly, as though attempting to get the officer to pull over. She then walks off with documents in hand, and the officer exits the vehicle. He advances towards her, and there's a verbal exchange, during which the off-duty officer reaches out, grabs the female traffic warden by the arm, and pushes her forcibly against his vehicle. It's at this point the traffic warden starts fighting him off. One passerby who also captured the incident gave an account of what she was witnessing.
She asked him for his license and he don't want to share. So why you wrapping up the one? I do not know. Because she asked him for his license and she had the insurance, he was a luxury.
The officer eventually places handcuffs on the traffic warden and pushes her into his vehicle. On Monday, the TTPS issued a release advising that Acting Police Commissioner Ulla Christopher had placed the officer on suspension pending an investigation. Today, the Police Service and the Social Welfare Association is calling on the public to let due process take its course. Association head Gideon Dixon sought to address some of the concerns in the public domain.
Whether the vehicle is marked or unmarked, it's a police vehicle. Right, so we have the authority when executing our duty to cause persons to be conveyed from point A to point B once detained lawfully. As it relates to a male officer arresting a female person, the law doesn't debar anything of that nature.
But Dixon acknowledges that the incident does little to help police public relations. He says more training is needed for police officers.
Coming out of the incident yesterday, we are not putting our head in the sand. An opportunity has been presented for us to look at where the weaknesses was in terms of how it played out in the public domain for younger officers and even senior officers. We must be mindful that we are in the age now where technology is at everybody's fingertip, and how you care about and conduct your affairs will be recorded.
He's calling on witnesses to not just post their accounts to social media, but to aid in the investigation.
If those persons have sufficient information, the investigators, I am certain that they will put out a number in terms of who they could contact, and they could go and give those information to the investigator and not to prejudice any matter before it is determined. But from the appearance of stuff in the public domain, sufficient was done to sully the name of the police service. But that was only the 5-minute snippet and not necessarily what would have transpired before. And we had to be careful.
Renessa Cutting, TV6 News.
In the meantime, the former police commissioner Gary Griffith has weighed in on the PSC's submission of the latest merit list for the next commissioner to the Parliament. On top of that list is acting top cop Ulla Christopher. This means that Griffith, who had reapplied, has no chance of being reappointed in the post. TV6's reporter Cindy Raghubartika Singh tells us more.
Former Police Commissioner Gary Griffith says despite reapplying for the post of top cop, it was obvious what the outcome would be.
When I reapplied for the post of Commissioner of Police, I did this knowing fully well that this new process would be manipulated to ensure a result that one man and one man alone wanted. And he did so regardless of whether it affected the safety and security of citizens, especially at a time when our country has never experienced such bloodshed and fear of crime in our history.
In a post to social media on Tuesday, Griffith said the country is run by a democratic dictatorship. He had some advice for Ulla Christopher, who is likely to be voted in Parliament on Friday.
I reapplied simply to expose the dictatorship that exists in this country because of a flawed, easily manipulated constitution with one man handpicking a president who then handpicks what is supposed to be an independent body, such as the Police Service Commission. And as such, the outcome was obvious. So I want to encourage the soon-to-be appointed commissioner to resist being used as a political pawn in anyone's games, and to remember her oath in office is to be in service of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and not to be politically manipulated or controlled, even if it costs her the post of commissioner.
As for his future, Griffith says it means he can now give his all to his political career as leader of the National Transformation Alliance.
Personally, I am even more encouraged and determined as my new political mission is now fully possible. I have served my nation as a commissioned officer in the Trinidad and Tobago Defence Force, National Security Advisor, Minister of National Security, and Commissioner of Police. Now, help me to help you by having me serve you in government in the next 2 years. I assure you, when we are in government, you will once again see the massive turnaround in crime you experienced prior to me demitting office as Commissioner of Police. And your safety and security will be my top priority.
Cindy Raghubartika Singh, TV6 News.
Hubbards is once again innovating the way you shop with its new online store, providing 24-hour shopping convenience. You can shop now for appliances, hardware, houseware, building material, and more. Free delivery island-wide. Start shopping now at hubbartshardware.gd. Safe, convenient, reliable.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.